Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that I have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. Sorry about the 2 seconds of silence probably in the beginning. I hit record, I waited and waited, and suddenly it was at like 3 seconds. So then I was like, all right. So we're going to continue our run of all things Chris Claremont and Chris Claremont era story. And we are looking today at the Uncanny X-Men 218 from 1987. And we've got an excellent cover here. You can definitely see the inspirations to Todd McFarlane and Marc Silvestri, who is going to be taking over X Men. I believe he will be doing this issue. Sorry. And then he doesn't do next issue. I think that Marvel finally got who it is that they wanted. And then he'll take over with issue 220. He will become the regular penciler on the title here. So I wanted to admire Arthur Adams' cover one more time before we go in there here. Bob Wyacek inks this cover for him. So we've got Rogue, we've got Dazzler, we've got Psylocke, and we have Longshot, who we really haven't done much in the X-Men with him at this moment. So he just recently joined. Chris Claremont did an adventure, a two-parter with Wolverine and Storm, and now it's a two-parter with the remaining X-Men. So Chris Claremont is kind of, I don't know, having fun, I think. So, all right. So we are in northern New Mexico, the Rio Diablo Mountains. Claremont is letting us know here. And we have Havoc, and of course, driving the Jeep would be Lorna Dane, also known as Polaris. And so they're going through and having a good time. And we see this little VW van here, and it's coming their way. And Havoc goes, "Is that clown drunk or crazy?" Or and goes, "Lorna, look out!" And so this crashes, or the vehicle goes through, but the VW van continues to go through, and so she yells for Alex. And so one of the worst things about these topless vehicles is how you can get decapitated. So, good use of screen tone being applied here. And so you can see the crash here ends up finally rolled over. And he's like hurt, so that means you're alive. I know what that feels like. I just recently had surgery, and I going, "Oh, I know I'm still alive because I'm in so much pain." And so Havoc says, "Roll bars and seatbelts saved us. Lucky." Noise. And so here you see a boulder, and he's like, "It's falling straight for us." So why not make a bad situation even worse? Chris Claremont, if he can think of it, then we're gonna make things worse for our characters. And so he uses his power here. We have um our title, Charge of the Light Brigade. And so he uses his power to get the boulder out. Of course, Alex Summers is Scott's, meaning Cyclops' brother, and also known as Havoc. And here we have our credits. Chris Claremont is the writer, Marc Silvestri with Dan Green doing the art. And this will be basically the team going forward, except for a couple of fill in issues here and there. It's going to be Marc Silvestri and Dan Green. Glennis Oliver, Thomas Zakowski. Glennis Oliver, I think, has been there from day one. Thomas Zakowski came very early during the Claremont Burn era. And then Ann Nesenti and Jim Shooter continue the editorial. Rest in peace, Jim Shooter. Rest in peace, Dan Green. And Shooter doesn't have too much time left at Marvel. We are at the end game for poor Mr. Shooter, who will be unceremoniously fired. So you can see all the groceries here as they were coming back from town. So very good. And so he sets up a shelter here. And he says, eggs are busted and the milk's all spilled. I'd wait a year or so before opening the soda and the beer cans that survive. And so she goes, you got the number of that truck lover? As a matter of fact, sweets, I did. And he asks her how she feels, and she says, sore all over. I can't wait to see the bruises. Well, if you show me where it hurts, I'll be glad to kiss it and make it better. Oh, that is so romantic. But when people are hurt, I don't know. This is such a movie trope and a story trope. Not just because of what Claremont's doing, but just anybody else. It's just, yeah, the this need that, hey, we have to make out because, yeah. So, and so it says here, much later here. All right, so they're carrying the supplies, and so she says, we'll have to make another run before it snows. And he snows, and he's not even prepared. And he goes, you sure you want to try? And she says, you rather walk home or back to town? And so she says, just take it easy, okay? Don't push yourself. And so she says, I'm no porcelain doll, you chauvinist worm. Pig. Chauvinist pig. Worms buster. I like pigs. And so she uses her powers, and she's got magnetic powers similar to Magneto. I say Magneto, not Magneto. And flips him over. And so off they go. Told you, but you can drive that stunt. Sorry, but you can drive that stunt about did me in. So, cross your fingers. Hot dog, she starts. Sounds awful, poor thing. I'll probably have to rebuild the engine, he says. After we get Doc McKay out to look you over, okay? So, back in the 80s, I guess, doctors still did house calls. And so she says, me and you both, right? I wonder why that bus hit us. I don't know. Don't care. And she says, but if I get a hold of the driver before Sheriff Carson does, I may forget everything I was ever taught about being a peaceful, law-abiding citizen. Now, it looks like, and you'll see in certain areas that for some reason something happened, and you see that someone has to re-letter certain things. This is not Orzakowski here. So it's yeah, it just happens. But you can really, when you're used to a certain letter or certain styles, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, this G is not even remotely anything. The E almost looks like John Workman put this in for him. So all right. And so if now it says here somewhere else, and so what we have here is Dazzler, and she was buried by the Juggernaut because he thought he killed her. And so she is so she's coming to, and she's like, where am I? What happened to me? And she goes, can't move. This is crazy. Each breath and effort. Never felt so tired, so empty. I'll generate some light so I can see. And so she goes, rock piled on me. My glow so faint already fading, I can't maintain it. And she realizes and screams out, I've been buried alive. And so we're now gonna have a backstory. I do have a playlist. Feel free to check that out. I have a New Mutants playlist. I have an X Men playlist. I have an X Factor playlist. I have a Wolverine playlist. I have a playlist for everything, and I have a playlist where I put everything together in reading order. So if you wanna go through the X Universe playlist where I put everything in reading order, you will see um everything. You'll have access to everything. So it's probably the best way I recommended. And so she is reminiscing on her battle with the Juggernaut and how she used up all her power and fainted, and Juggernaut most likely thinks she died, and so he buried her here. And so she listens to the a little bug here crawling on the stone, and listens to, she needs to use her mutant power, but she, for her mutant power to work, she needs sound, so she can convert sound into light. It's how it works. Hey, we had to have spectacular mutants and a field mouse going, and the wind, and the bird, and then she hears the stream, and um she goes, I think I'm gonna make it. Then suddenly Psylocke appears here. She goes, I sense your thoughts but not your location. And she says, I'll transmute the sound energy I absorb into light and send up a flare. And so she does that, and she goes, I hope you guys had your eyes peeled. That stunt pretty near finished me. And then we get a nice little black panel. I love this thing. It is so, you just don't see these types of, so we have a 4, 8, 12 panel grid here, and you just don't see grids anymore. Not like that. So they dig her out here, and Psylocke speaks telepathically to her and says, gently, Allison, take things easy. You're still terribly weak. And so, out loud, then she says, you suffer an extreme case of traumatic shock, but there's no permanent damage. I think you'll be fine. And Longshot says, that's great. And so, Dazzler says, I feels like such a baby in more ways than one. And Longshot says, we've been looking all over for you, Allison. We were really worried. And she says, sorry to put you to so much trouble, Longshot. And he says, what are you talking about? We're X-Men, aren't we? Teammates and friends. The very best, she says. So they're all new here. And of course, he's like, he goes to Rogue, and Longshot says, Rogue, don't stand apart. Join us. Allie needs you. And she says, I'm always in spirit, but not in flesh. Gotta be careful. And so we always get a taste of the powers, even though she's covered from head to toe. So this makes no sense. If my bare flesh touches any of you and yours, I'll steal your powers and psyche, maybe forever. So she throws this rock, and it goes into orbit. So that really isn't necessary, because she's completely covered up. So, but Claremont wants to let us know. Are you sure you've recovered enough to walk, Allison? And she says, I'm fine, Betsy. How'd you know I was in trouble? And Psylocke says, a telephone alert from a friend who saw you gallivanting off after Cade Marco, the Juggernaut. He's one of the X-Men's most formidable for foes. And Dazzler says, I know. I learned that the hard way. And Longshot, says, we came to help, Allie. Why won't you let us? Why are you so sad? And Dazzler says, because I don't belong. Not really. Not among you X-Men. Well, these are all brand new X-Men except for Rogue, so I'm not in your league. I'm a liability. You heroes are better off without. And Rogue says, what a crock. The Dazzler who fought me to a standstill more than once had way more gumption than this. You think none of us has ever screwed up? Be real, girl. We're none of us perfect. We all have a lot to learn. And so Psylocke says, that's why we are a team, to balance out those weaknesses so that the whole becomes stronger than the sum of the parts. Claremont and dialogue. So, um, anyway, so Psylocke continued. Now, real quick about Silvestri, he has the same trope of Arthur Adams, in which he draws legs much longer than the top. So that is something Arthur Adams does, and so you will see legs that are um, that are not even near proportion. So that is a Silvestri thing. He and so Arthur Adams does that as well. So anyway, Psylocke continues here. But we cannot do so if none of us trust one another and reach out when we're needed. So those two hugs, and look at Longshot, like yay! And so they get a radio uh, bulletin that they're sending troops to get Juggernaut, and so um, Rogue says, "This is our play, X-Men, or what?" So, all right, and so we are in Edinburgh in Scotland. And for those of you who don't know, Scotland is like north of England. They share the same island, or this yeah the they share the same area. There's three countries in one island, and so I think you have Wales and you have Scotland and you have England. I think Scotland is at the very north of it. And so here comes Rogue carrying the team and then sets down the vehicle. It's probably a Wagoneer. I would almost say it's a Wagoneer here. So and so as Psylocke goes through, he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, long shot. Wow, New York's mostly made of glass. This place is all stone." And Psylocke says, "Tough and sturdy, long shot, like its people." And we see Allison putting on her costume. "Watch your step, everyone. The sheep that roam this hillside aren't housebroken." And Locke says, like, "Neat," and she sighs here. And Locke says, "There, Rogue. I cannot sense the Juggernaut's thoughts, but I can easily direct you to those who are encountering him." And the reason she cannot sense his thoughts is because of his helmet. And Rogue takes off and he says, "On my way, Psylocke. Rest of y'all follow quickly as you can." And so she is looking at this path of destruction, and she's like, well, this has got to be it. I don't know why Juggernaut does that. He just wrecks through everything, and it's just a trope that they do, but hey. And so here he is, making a mess, and she goes, "Yo, Chubbs." Trust me, he's not chubby. "Ain't you got nothing better to do than to run local insurance rates into the stratosphere?" And so he says, "I do what I want, Rogue, and go where I please. I don't want to get I don't want you don't want to get hurt. You better stand aside." And she goes, "Can't do that, Juggernaut." And so all of a sudden she takes a punch and goes boom, and just wrecks everything with the shockwave here. And she says, "Some punch. I'm impressed." And me too, as he just stands there. "Let's see if you get sugar as well as you give," and just kind of hits her with the chest, and she goes through. And she's like, "Ow, ow, 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 ow." And so she lands there. And all these people, these comments, I wasn't going to read them, but they're like, "Wow, what was that? A girl, a Supergirl, cute anyway. Call the cops. Then more likely. Someone go see. Get her autograph." So here comes Psylocke. She's driving this truck, and Juggernaut lets us know he can't be stopped by anyone or anything. And so Psylocke says, "You'll forgive us X-Men, for trying." And he's like, "Your funeral, babe." And so, it is one of those things. It's kind of cool. So Juggernaut has shown up. Um, let's see, one, two. This is like the third time. Juggernaut was not used very often by Chris Claremont, but he was used. Um, so he was used the very first time that the X Men were at Banshee's Castle in Ireland. Um, they were used then on a battle when Colossus had broken up with Kitty, and then this little two-parter with Juggernaut. So, um, yeah, it's and then I don't think Claremont used them again. So, and you can't use someone like Juggernaut all the time. I mean, Juggernaut is a one-trick pony. It's just power, and once you beat him, you got to find different ways to sort of beat him. And so, Juggernaut is one of those characters I think that has a ceiling and a floor, so you sort of know what you're gonna kind of get on one of his stories. So it's probably not the kind of stuff that Chris Claremont wants to write all the time. So I think throughout that legendary run of his, I think we only get 3 Juggernaut stories. So, all right, and so look at that. Come here, bimbo. And so she tries to use her powers, and he's like, "That hurts. Didn't think that was possible. My helmet's supposed to protect me from mental powers," and he had designed that to keep his half brother or step brother or whatever, Charles Xavier, off. And so, when once it's done, he goes, "Nice try, X-Men, but that's the only shot you're gonna get at me. Say your prayers, Frail, and let Psylocke go." And it was Longshot here, and throws his knives, and he's like, "What? Who?" And so Longshot introduces himself, and Juggernaut is like, "Your history, chump. You figure those little knives can do me any damage?" And he knows, you never know. Anything's possible. Now, Longshot's powers are luck. So he is one of those cases where he's more lucky than good. And so Juggernaut goes to smash him and misses, and he is just trying his best to get Longshot, but is just not able to get him. He's like, "Hold still, blast it." And so he kicks him in the face and nothing, and he's like, "When I get you, they're gonna scrape you off the sidewalk." And Longshot's like, "This isn't very nice." He goes, "Neither am I." So he's gonna crush this building and drop it on Longshot. Just very cool. And look at this, just done in a panel. Not even, and nowadays this would be like a double page spread or something like that. Storytelling was done back then, but there was an evolution, and we can blame Rob Liefeld for some of that evolution, because he's Mr. Double Page Spreads, and I need my money shot all the time. So off we go. And so Longshot, or sorry, they're like, "Oh my God, he killed Longshot." And so, and Juggernaut's walking away. And so both Dazzler and Psylocke are looking for Longshot, and they're finally Rogue comes along, and they're like, "Find him here." He's like, "Hi, Psylocke. Not even scratch. Real mess, huh?" And so they carry him out, and they're like, "You could have, should have been killed." And he's like, "Is that bad?" So one of those things that we're running through is that Longshot is sort of ignorant about life in general. So I have covered the Longshot limited series. I do have a playlist. It is again also on the X Universe playlist, so feel free to check that out. And so here comes Juggernaut again, and here comes the X-Men still. And he's like, "You guys should have stayed away. And this time I'll make sure." And so Rogue is like, kissing him to try and get her powers, and she goes, "Longshot ain't the X-Men to worry about, Chubbs. Not while I'm around." And so he's like, "No, get away." And so um, as she kisses him, which was in all the last time. So it says here she did that to him, and that was in Marvel Team Up 150, which I have not covered. So in Marvel Team Up 150, again, which I did not cover, was written by Louise Simonson, and it was like a double-sized issue, and essentially it came out in 1984, and teamed up Spider-Man and the X-Men, but it was a Wolverine-less X-Men, if I remember correctly. Um, so here she grabs Juggernaut, absorbing all his stuff, takes off his helmet, and she's now taken all his powers, which makes you wonder why she hasn't bulked up. With his stress augmented mind, uh, and the seals of his armor weakened by Longshot spikes, I was able to yank Juggy's helmet clean off, and then so she tosses him down, and he lands there. Wish I could finish him as easily. Normally, my touch knocks my victims unconscious, but Juggy's power is magical, and there's more to it than I can safely handle. He doesn't pass out, and I can probably absorb. He doesn't pass out, and I can only absorb a portion of his power. So here comes the train, and she's like, "British Rail ain't gonna be at all pleased with us. Can't be helped. Hold that pose, you lummox." And so she's gonna go through, and I love this Rambo. That is cool. So she makes a crater here. We need a deserted place for this fight, where no bystanders will be endangered. Appears the train line. It is, and of course they're like, "There's a train coming." Oh man, and she's like the Peachy, and she's like, "Uh oh, guess who's just recovered?" So he's about to put his hands on her, but she evades it and gets out of the way here. And so she grabs Longshot and says, "The train has a priority. We can't let it crash." And it's kind of funny because remember in the beginning how she was barely covered, and or not, she was barely covered. She was completely covered and didn't want to touch him. But now she's like all ripped. Her clothes are all ripped to shreds, and now she has to hold him. And she's like, "Come on, Longshot, you're with me." And he's like, "Ah." All right, and so they're gonna head to the train here. Shoot, it's a big one, a passenger train coming fast. No way to I can stop it in time. And Longshot says, "Rogue, what's wrong? Where are we going? What about the Juggernaut? And why are we leaving Dazzler and Psylocke?" And of course, the conductor sees the crater, and they're like, "It's too late." And so he hits the brakes, and so he sends Longshot inside. "Inside, partner, help the passengers best as you can. Maybe your wild luck power will keep them alive and unhurt. The rest, though, is up to me." And this is just so cool. This is, I think, why Marc Silvestri was chosen over everybody else, because his style, um, it isn't just cartoony. It's very I don't know. It's very eye pleasing. Everything, not just because he draws pretty girls. It's the entire thing. Marc Silvestri is a great penciler, and so um, we have Psylocke here, and she goes, "Rogue's trying to stop the train, Dazzler. We two are on our own." And so Dazzler says, "So why don't we get smart and beat feet away from here?" And Juggernaut's like, "My full strength's return. Hey, Dazzler, you're okay. I didn't kill you. That's great." And so she uses her power. And she goes, "Too stubborn to die, Jugs. That's on me. Too darn dumb to know when to quit." And so Rogue's still trying to get the airplane. He's blinded by her. Um, "Psylocke, what are you doing? My Dazzle Blast won't fend him long." And she goes, "Our work's not done. Um, we have a plan, Dazzler. We must follow it through the end." And she's like, "The train's about to drop on our heads. Juggernaut's invulnerable. We're not." And so But if the X-Men don't deal with him, who will? How many will suffer because we punked out? Easy to call myself X-Men and hero. Now I have to prove it. So Chris Claremont always doing these, uh, characterizations. So Allison is like, well, I don't know, scared or not, I have to do something. So Rogue's still trying to stop the train. She jumps on Juggernaut and uses her powers kind of with light to get the rest of his leather straps out. So they're like, he's yours, Psylocke, nail him. And so she finally gets him and knocks him out. And look at Rogue. I'm getting too old for this. As she managed to stop the train. Very cool stuff. This is just so fun. So, all right. And it's kind of funny that I just love this stuff here from this is something that they did in the mid 80s. These bullpen bulletins with these quote of the month. And then they always had the checklist, so you knew exactly what had come out and what you had to do. So I had, oh my gosh, I had Daredevil, the New Mutants, I had Web of Spider-Man, I had West Coast Avengers, I had G.I. Joe Special Missions, I had Avengers X-Men, I had Mephisto versus the X-Men, I had the Hulk, and this was by McFarlane. McFarlane was doing that. Of course, I had X-Men. I had this G.I. Joe. I had the Marvel Saga. I had Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Thor, Peter Parker Spectacular. I had X Factor 17, Classic X-Men 10, Transformers 29. I did not have the G.I. Joe Digest. I had the Marvel Handbook. And let's see, did I collect any of these Marvel Ages? No, but I did have the Emperor Doom graphic novel. So, yeah, a lot of stuff here. So, X-Men are helping rebuild. They captured the Juggernaut. He's still knocked out. And they're like, man, he weighs a ton. And as they're putting him away, and the X-Men are very happy that they figured they'd save the day, this to get a thing, you can see here that a note is being passed. And he says that, well, we appreciate your aid, X-Men, but while you were battling Juggernaut, his accomplice Black Tom Cassidy was looting the Bank of Scotland. Evidently, this rampage was no more than a diversion to hold our attention while the real crime was being committed. And she's like, we fell for it like amateurs. No, you had to stop the Juggernaut. So they're like, you win some, you lose some. So, and then we have like a epilogue here. We're still with Havoc, and this part looks like it was all relettered here. And so, remember those campers who stopped by our place last week asking for directions to the canyons? Weren't they driving a VW bus? It's not that far out of our way, Alex. Worth checking out. And they're like, campsite, but no campers. Every tent, every piece of equipment has been torn apart. We better notify the sheriff. Things are a lot worse than we thought. And look here, a burn scar. Something crashed and not that long ago, and it ended up against the ridge beneath the rockfall. Plain smugglers, maybe? And she says, let's find out. And so this is going to set up a story that is going to be over a year away. So just FYI, this is a setup here. And so he uses his powers and she uses her powers, and together, and so they see here, and he goes, what the devil? And he says, the devil is right. Alex, the campers, they've been butchered and nothing behind them. And he goes, it's a star shark. I recognize it from pictures back at Xavier School. The living attack craft used by the Brood. If it's here. That means one of those murdering aliens is loose on Earth. Lorna, if that's one's a brood queen, if she lays her eggs, if they hatch, the human race is doomed. So this is again set up because we're gonna have a lot of stuff happen before we even get this. Like Fall of the Mutants is coming, and so this is just something that he's setting up, and those darn subplots of his. So where duty lies. Uncanny X-Men 218 by Chris Claremont, Marc Silvestri with Dan Green. Like and subscribe. I do thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.